Welcome to the Teach Joyfully podcast, where we talk about all things elementary teaching with some mom stuff thrown in. I'm Lisa Burns, a teacher success coach, veteran elementary teacher, and mom of 5. I'll be your host. Thanks for joining me today. Do you ever feel like there's just not enough time in the day for self-care activities? Maybe you feel like there's just too much to do and you're just too tired at the end of the day to do one more thing, right? I've been there. I get that. But I have to say, if there's one thing that we should take away from this last year, it's the fact that self-care is essential. It is. If we are not taking care of ourselves, who will? We have to put ourselves first, and no, it's not selfish. I know you hear that all the time, but do you really believe it? It is not selfish to care for yourself first, because you can't pour from an empty pot. If you have nothing left, what good are you to all of those students or even to your own family if you have nothing left? There's nothing left to give. How can you give them anything of value? You have to care for yourself first so that you have even more to give. Trust me, it's so much easier to take care of yourself in the first place than it is to go back and try and fix it all later in the year when you're just done. As John Wooden once said, if you don't have time to do it right the first time, then when are you going to find time to go back and fix it? Wise words indeed. So in case you haven't guessed, this episode is going to be all about teacher self-care. There are 7 ways that you need to be taking care of yourself. Yes, there's lots of activities around each of those ways that you can choose from, but there are 7 different ways that you actually need to be cared for. So let's just dive in. Number 1, you have to be taken care of physically. Besides the obvious answers to taking care of our physical side of getting plenty of exercise and eating right, the next thing that comes to mind is sleep. And how many of us have been sleep deprived because we're burning the candle at both ends, right? I mean, you were working late and getting up early trying to get it all done. But that is not sustainable. Self-care is all about sustainability. It really is. We need rest, but we need 2 types of rest. We need sleep, which we all know, but do you know you also need downtime? I bet you do know, but you don't really think of it that way. So let's talk about sleep first, and then we'll talk about downtime. For sleep, you need to have a bedtime, and you need to stick to it. I know I struggle with this one myself. I do. I am a night owl by nature, but I really like the early mornings, and so I wind up shorting myself on both ends, which would be just fine if I lived in Spain and were taking a 2-hour nap in the middle of the day, but that doesn't really happen that often in my life. One of the ways that I help myself is to set a bedtime alarm on my phone. That's not the actual time I'm going to bed. It's the time that I know I'm going to start getting ready for bed. I have an entire routine of things that I do in order to get myself ready to go to bed. Just things that make my morning better, but also help me rest. So I like to make sure that there's no dishes in the kitchen sink. There's just something about getting up in the morning and having yesterday's dishes sitting out that makes me feel like I'm already starting the day behind. So if I can come into a clean kitchen first thing in the morning, I'm a happy girl. So that's one thing I added in to my getting ready for bed routine that has become an essential. Obviously, there's all kinds of other things you can do as part of your getting ready for bed routine. You can do whatever it is that's going to make you feel better in the morning, but also help you rest that night, from getting washed up and brushing your teeth to making sure there's no dishes in the sink. If that's important to you, by all means, steal that one and go ahead and do it. That just makes me feel good, but figure out what it is that will make your morning better. Because your bedtime routine is not just about getting to sleep, it's also about setting yourself up for success the next morning. So I challenge you to take a few minutes and stop and think about, what will your bedtime routine be? Then make sure you set that alarm for when you need to start that bedtime routine so that you can get to bed on time. The second way that we also can take care of ourselves physically is by having downtime. Now, we are always fighting for downtime whether we know it or not. I want you to think, how many times have you sat on the sofa staying up later than you should, watching TV, reading a book, or doing something else because you were feeling so worn out and you just needed a few minutes? That's downtime. And you're trying to steal some downtime by taking it from your sleep. And the best way to fix that is to plan your downtime. We all need it. We need wind down time free of work and worries and stress to just do something we enjoy, to relax. We need that time to relax before we really can fully sleep. It will help us sleep better and get better quality sleep as well. So downtime and sleep actually go together. One supports the other. Something that was always important to me in order for me to feel like I could sit down and rest and relax was I needed my home to be tidied up. Once we had kids, toys seemed like they were everywhere. So I created a system of baskets for toys that stayed in our main living area. And those toys all had to get picked up before the kids went to bed, and they helped. We just created a whole routine around it so that everything would get picked up. And then when I came back downstairs, I didn't have a big mess to sit down in. I can't stand clutter. It's not relaxing for me. It's fine when the kids are up and we're all playing, and that's great. But when I want to sit down and relax, I want it clean and simple, and I don't want to sit in the middle of a bunch of clutter. And so having everybody tidy up before they went to bed made my chance to sit down and relax so much better. So figure out what it is that you need for some downtime in your afternoon or evening and figure out how you're going to do that. How you choose to spend your downtime is entirely up to you. There isn't any right or wrong here. I mean, if you want to binge on Netflix, by all means, go for it. But just know that that's what you're doing and be intentional about it so that you don't always feel like you're scrambling and trying to find a little bit of time for yourself. Just make sure that you're being conscious about how you're going to spend that time so that you feel rested and relaxed. So let's talk about another type of self-care. We need emotional self-care as well. Our emotional self-care is being able to talk out your feelings, whether you do that on paper or talk to somebody else. We have to deal with all of the stuff that we are emotionally tied up in every single day. Now, for me, that looks like journaling and praying every day. I do that in the mornings, but sometimes if I'm really feeling that stress, I take the time to do that in the evening too before I go to bed. It helps me let things go so I can move on. I know people who do things like 2 wins in a grow. So they might stop and think of 2 great things from their day and then think of one thing that needs to change. It might be something they need to change or a better way they're going to react to things that happen at their school site, whatever it is. There's another way that we emotionally can take care of ourselves, and this one might sound a little odd, but it's true. We have to build and maintain strong boundaries in order to be taking care of ourselves. Why do I say that? Because if we don't have strong boundaries, we are giving away control. We're giving away control of our classroom if we don't have strong boundaries with our classroom management. We're giving away control of our time if we allow others to dictate how our extra time will be spent. We give away control of our inner peace when we allow others to treat us poorly. All of those are boundaries. And if we don't have strong boundaries and non-negotiables, what's okay with me, what is not okay with me, and we don't stick to it, we're not taking care of ourselves emotionally. That's one way that we really can take care of ourselves, because if we're not, how often have you been in a situation where people have been crossing your boundaries, whether it's your students because we're not keeping firm to what we said we would do with our classroom management, or something else. And by the end of the day, we're tired and frustrated and upset. Well, you've now attacked your emotional health by not having strong boundaries. So, a gift to yourself and a gift to all those around you is to have strong boundaries. So, something to work on for sure. Boundaries are hard, and some people are better at them than others, but we can all learn to have good boundaries. It's a habit. And it's a habit worth making. So, another way that you need to take care of yourself is mentally. I know it's hard not to think about work all the time. I am a work addict. I wish I weren't, but I love teaching so much that it's hard not to think about it all the time. Being an educator is such a part of who we are and how we think of ourselves in our life that it's hard to separate it sometimes from our everyday. It just kind of pervades everything that we do. Well, we need a mental break. We do. And one way to do that and shut all that down, I found, is to have a work shutdown routine. So what is a work shutdown routine? Well, a work shutdown routine is how do you wrap things up so you can walk away from work and leave it and not keep worrying over it, thinking about it, pondering it, and you can let it go. A work shutdown routine can take lots of forms. It can be simple routines like wrapping up email, putting things away, cleaning everything up. Those are all great things. Whatever it is that you need your work shutdown routine to be, to tell your brain and tell your body that work is done, it's time to walk away and go do something else. Here's a creative way to do that if you're still, after all that, having trouble letting it all go. This is a story I heard a very long time ago. I can't remember where it came from. I wish I could. But it's a very powerful story. It goes like this. There was a woman who would look out of her window every evening, and she would see her neighbor every workday. He would come home from work, park his car, get out of his car, and then he would stand by the big oak tree in his front lawn, and he would hang imaginary things onto the oak tree. He didn't have anything in his hand, but he kept hanging things and putting things on the oak tree. And then, after a couple of minutes, he would walk away and go into his house. And she couldn't figure out what he was doing, but he did this every day. So one day she asked him, "What are you doing? I see you every day over by this tree. What are you doing?" And he said, "Oh, I finally realized that my family was getting whatever was left of my day instead of the best of me. I was bringing work home and worrying over it and thinking about it all the time. So before I walk in the house, I hang up all of the day's problems on this tree. And I know when I go to walk back to my car in the morning, I can pick them all back up again and take them back to work with me. So this way, I can just be free when I'm home with my family." I think it's such a powerful image because it is kind of like that. We need a way to kind of put everything away so we can let it go and let work be work and let our home and our free time be separate from that. We need that mental division. And some days it's not going to happen because you've got report cards or other kinds of things going on. I get it. But most of the time, it needs to happen in order for you to get mentally rested. So my work shutdown routine does not look like hanging imaginary things on the oak tree in my front lawn, which I do actually have an oak tree in my front lawn. But it does look like this. I sort and respond to emails. I clean off my desktop, both my physical desktop and my computer desktop. There is nothing on my computer desktop at the end of the day. I schedule anything that I didn't finish, put it back on the calendar and figure out when I'm going to get it done. And anything that needs follow-up, I get that on the calendar as well. I check my calendar for the next day and sketch out what the next morning and day might look like. And I make note of any meetings or appointments or phone calls that I might need to make. So I get them on there and I know I'm ready to go so I can pick it back up first thing in the morning. Whatever your work shutdown routine looks like, make it effective for you. It might take some trial and error, but it's worth it. So the next way that you need to take care of yourself is socially. You need to get out and have fun. And I hope that you already do this. But if you don't, make a real point of it. Take the time during the school year to meet a friend for coffee. Take the time to make plans for the weekend. I know it seems like one more thing to do, but you will be so glad come Monday that you have gotten out and done some fun things with people you care about. So the next way that we need to take care of ourselves is sensory. We can get sensory overload very easily and not even know it. We talk about this with our students, but it happens to us as well. There gets to be a point where the amount of information coming at us at any given point can be overwhelming. There's lots of ways to have sensory overload. Sensory overload can come from electronics and media and the news and everything coming at us and just so much information that it just becomes overwhelming. We can also get sensory overload from clutter and disorganization. That's another way that we can get sensory overload. So you need to pay attention to what is overloading your sensory system so that you know how to fix it. What is it? Is it too much media? Is it too much social media? Is it too much electronics and you just need to walk away and do a tech-free day? I knew a family that always had tech-free Tuesday. And so unless they had homework or work to do on the computer, all of their electronics were turned off and they did only things that didn't require any electronics. It was fabulous. It was something that they loved so much, they wound up doing it Tuesdays and Thursdays. If you can make something like that work in your life, more power to you. Figuring out what it is that's giving you sensory overload is important, first of all, and then you have to decide what your non-negotiables are. What do you need in order to not have sensory overload? Do you need more organization in your life? Do you need to get rid of some clutter? Do you need to get rid of some of your tech time and just give yourself more downtime or face-to-face time with loved ones? Whatever it is, take the time to evaluate and figure it out. It's very easy to get overloaded in our plugged-in, fast-paced, information-rich world. So when you're feeling extra stressed, you might just check and see if it's sensory overload. So the next way that you need to be taking care of yourself is your creative side. We all need a creative outlet, and creative outlets can look very different. For my husband, his creative outlet might be welding. Your creative outlet could be dance, it could be music, it could be scrapbooking, it could be digital design, it could be drawing, it could be almost anything. I actually know someone whose creative outlet was fashion. So she started a little fashion blog just for herself because it made her feel good. And that was her creative outlet. She had a very serious job and this was her creative outlet. And that's how she expressed herself, was through fashion. There's so many different ways to take care of yourself in a creative way. You might not think of yourself as a creative person, but let me tell you, there's lots of ways to be creative. You might be creative in baking. Maybe you really love to cook. That can be a creative outlet because you're creating something, you're doing something and creating something new. Whatever your creative outlet is, just take the time to figure out what it is you love. Just because you're not an artist doesn't mean you don't have a creative side. We all have a creative side. We all are creative in some way. You just might not be recognizing it, but indulging in a creative outlet helps us feel inspired and it helps us feel a need in our soul. We are made to create things. We are. And whatever it is that you're creating may not be something that anyone else will enjoy, but it's not supposed to be. It's meant for you. And if other people enjoy it along with you, well, that's even better. But if they don't, that's okay. A creative outlet doesn't have to be something you share with other people. And the last way that we need to take care of ourselves is spiritually. Spending time every single day in prayer is the only way to develop a real relationship with God. It is, and we cannot fully accept or even know the gifts that He's trying to give us or the lessons He's trying to teach us if we don't actually spend any time with Him. We need that spiritual growth. Maybe you're in a Bible study. Maybe you read your Bible and journal every day. Maybe it's a strong prayer routine, but you need time to connect with God. We have to feed that need. We have to feed that spiritual side of us. If we aren't doing that, nothing will ever go right. Not completely. We have to feed that side of our soul as well. And that's it, my friends. Thank you for indulging me today in my soapbox. I promise I don't do this very often, but I do feel very strongly about self-care, as you can tell. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you liked today's episode, I'd love it if you'd go on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen and leave a review. And while you're there, hit the subscribe button so you'll never miss an episode. Also, you can continue the conversation online with me in my Facebook group, the Teach Joyfully podcast community, where elementary teachers can connect, get help, and encouragement for all kinds of education and parenting topics. You can find the show notes and links to some extra resources on my website at www.hopeineducation.com/podcast. And remember, a happy teacher is a good teacher. So until next time, teach joyfully and take care of you.